Okay, I'd like to thank you all for coming along this evening for the second in our keynote lectures for the 10 Billion series. I'm Amanda Crawley-Jackson. I'm from the Department of French at Sheffield, actually, but I'm one of the academic leads on the 10 Billion programme. And delighted to have here this evening Marco Viceconti, about whom I shall tell you a little more in a moment. Just a couple of housekeeping issues first. We're not expecting any fire alarms, so if the alarm does go off, it does mean we need to evacuate the room. Fortunately, this didn't happen last night, and we're not expecting it to happen tonight. But if the alarm did go off, could you all just make your way to the back, please, and follow the green men, follow the signs to evacuate the building. The second point is to do with photography. This evening is being photographed. And if any of you don't want to appear in any of the photographs that are taken this evening, could you please identify yourselves at the end to one of my colleagues at the back? And there are mechanisms in place whereby we can check that you don't appear in any of the photographs that might be taken of the event. Okay, thank you. So Achieve More is the University of Sheffield's interdisciplinary programme for undergraduate students. Level 2 Achieve More, 10 billion, is quite unusual in the sense that it brings together undergraduate students in their second year from all faculties and all disciplines, unlike levels 1 and 3, which are more faculty or department based. So in this programme, we're bringing together students from biblical studies, with civil engineering, medicine, dentistry. So it's quite an ambitious programme, and we're asking students to come together and encounter examples of interdisciplinary research and research networks such as Insignio, to give them an idea of the ways in which we might work in a more interdisciplinary way, and the creativity but also the challenge, or the challenges, I'll say in the plural, that interdisciplinarity affords. So we decided to make the keynotes open to the public. I don't know how many of you are not from the University of Sheffield, but our decision was really based on the fact that we have some wonderful speakers and researchers here at the University of Sheffield, and we wanted to share their wonderfulness with everyone. So if you have come from outside the university, thank you very much for coming along, and I'm sure you'll have a wonderful evening. The purpose of this week is to introduce the 10 Billion programme and the key issues that will affect us all in our lifetime. I'm guessing many of you might come from a faculty where 10 billion might mean something to you. Over in the Faculty of Arts, I have said to a few people 10 billion, and they say, what is that? Oh, I learned this too last year. It's predicted population, global population in 2055. So what we're doing this week is introducing the issues of 10 billion. And the effects of a substantially larger world population, the effects also of an ageing population, and issues affecting humanity such as law, justice, health and migration. We have more lectures this week. On Thursday we have Sir Howard Morrison, QC, who is a judge at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. That lecture, I'm afraid, is only open to students and staff from the University of Sheffield. On Friday, we have the Halford Mackinder Chair in Geography and author of 10 Billion, Professor Danny Dorling, who is now a professor at Oxford. He used to be a professor of geography here, speaking with Carl Lee. And he's debating a whole number of polemical issues relating to human geography and population growth. And then tomorrow evening we have Professor Jackie Labbe from my own faculty, from Arts and Humanities. She's the PBC for Arts and Humanities, and she's going to be talking about industrialization and the environment in the 19th century novel and in art. So bringing an arts perspective to some of the questions that we're discussing over the course of the week. So if you would like to come to those lectures this week, all of the information is on our webpage. We're on quite a number of social media platforms, and I think the easiest thing is just to Google us, Sheffield 10 Billion, and you'll find a list of all the events that are running. There are plenty more besides the keynotes. And we're also encouraging people to tweet so we can get people involved in the conversation and keep a record of it. The hashtag, if you are part of that Twitter sphere, is hashtag Chef10BN, and it's just chef with one F. Okay, as I learned. Okay, so For now, and for tonight, I'd like to welcome to the stage our very special guest speaker, Professor Marco Viceconti, who is Professor of Biomechanics at the University of Sheffield. If you'd like to join me in welcoming him to the stage. Thank you. So I'll just say a few words, and Marco said not to say very much.
No, please.
I'll give you the essentials. So Marco is currently the Executive Director of the Insignio Institute of Medicine, which is a joint initiative between the University of Sheffield and the Sheffield Teaching Hospital NHS Foundation Trust. And before this, he was a Technical Director of the Medical Technology Lab at the Rizzoli Orthopedic Institute in Bologna, Italy. I practiced Marco Viceconti. I didn't practice Rizzoli. Rizzoli?
You're doing okay.
Thank you. Okay. So Marco's main research interests are related to the development and validation of medical technology, especially involving simulation and primarily in relation to neuromusculoskeletal diseases. He's published over 200 papers and serves as a reviewer for many international funding agencies and peer-reviewed journals. And we're delighted to have Marco here as one of the key figures in the emerging virtual physiological human, or VPH, community, and also currently president of the VPH Institute. And tonight Marco is going to tell us about the possible role of predictive technologies in ensuring the provision of universal healthcare in an overpopulated world. So please welcome Marco Viceconti.
Thank you very much. Turn this off. Can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, let's go. Universal healthcare in a world of 10 billion. The role that technologies, in particular, one new type of technology called predictive technology, can play. Before we start, let me start with the word of a song. It's time to trust my instinct, close my eyes and leap. It's time to try defying gravity. I think I'll try defying gravity, and you can't pull me down. Do you feel it? Do you feel this gravitational pull that make us criticize everything and do nothing to improve things? The topic that we are discussing today, how technology can help providing universal health care in a world of 10 billion people, is the perfect theme to induce in all of us this paralyzing pessimism that I believe is the signature of our times. So before we start, let me remind you the word of a man who died in prison, guilty only of believing in a better world, Antonio Gramsci. Pessimismo della ragione, ottimismo della volontà. Pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. So my advice as we walk through this very complex topic today and during the week in the discussion about the world of 10 billion is this. Always look at the facts without any illusion, no matter how bad they are. But never stop to wish for a better world and act accordingly. So let's get started. What is this 10 billion thing? A couple of years ago, the United Nations published a report that forecast that somewhere in this century, the population of the world will cross the psychological barrier of 10 billion. There's nothing special about this number, but it sounds a lot. And so everybody got scared. Books were written, enormous debate started. And the question is, what can we do with all these people? And how can we provide food, shelter, water, protect the environment, and so on and so forth? And of course, one of the questions is, how can we provide health care to 10 billion people? But before we try to answer that, maybe another question needs to be answered. Do we need to provide health care? Is health care necessarily a good thing for humanity? We might assume it is, but is it actually true? Now, the United Kingdom is probably, as far as I know, the only country in the world that has enough historical demographic data to plot the life expectancy at birth starting from 1543. So this curve represents how a British would expect to live at birth, on average, from the mid-16th century until today. And if you look at this plot, you will see that although there are quite local oscillations related to war plagues and a lot of other horrible things, for many centuries, the life expectation in UK was about 40 years old. This doesn't mean that people died at 40. It means that about a third of the children would die at birth or near to birth, and those that survived would typically have a life expectancy around 50, 60 years. But my point is, it did not change. And then, quite suddenly, in the middle of the 19th century, it started to climb up, and has continued to climb up until today, reaching 80 years old of average life expectancy in this country. What happened? Well, let me offer you some hints. 1818, the Charing Cross Hospital opens in London, the first modern hospital as we intended. 1848, the government issued the Public Health Act, the first piece of legislation that recognized public health as such. 1871, the first compulsory vaccination system is introduced in this country. These three events represent the start of modern healthcare in the United Kingdom. And as an immediate effect, the life expectancy started to climb up and hasn't stopped until then. And I don't have the time to show you the data, but the same argument could be applied to every country in the world. The more health care we provide, the longer is the life expectancy in that country. Okay, so health care is good. We need to provide health care as much as we can. But how is the relation about how much we spend in health care and the life expectancy? This it's a little bit old graph. It's based on 2008 data, but the logic doesn't change. It's very complicated. And every point is a country, okay? So it represents how much every country spends for every inhabitant, on average, in healthcare in a year, in relation to the life expectancy, the average life expectancy in that country, okay? So let me guide you through an interpretation of this data, a possible one. First, there's a block of countries where the life expectation, regardless of what they spend in healthcare, is less than 50 years old. This is the average life expectancy, okay? I believe that this country don't have an healthcare problem, in the sense that they have some other problem that come before healthcare. And they can be summarized in three things, plus one: water, shelter, food. And the fourth is peace. Every country has a different story, but there are fundamental issues in this country that shorten the life expectancy dramatically, which are independent from the health care. And before we can start any health care intervention in this country, we must start to address these fundamental needs. So today I will not talk about this country because, as I said, I don't believe that health care is a problem yet. Then there is a second group of countries. I'll call them, for simplicity, the red countries. Has no political connotation, it's just a color. This country have in common that they spend less than $200 US in healthcare per inhabitant per year. So they spend very little in healthcare. But interestingly, this country had a life expectancy that oscillates between 50 up to until over 70 years old. So there must be something in these countries that is not related to the investment in health care that produced such a huge difference. Don't you agree? Then there are the blue countries. And these are the countries where the relationship between the healthcare expenditure and the life expectancy is more clear. These are the countries where the more you spend, the more you live. And then there is us, the wealthy country, the rich country. And here the problem is opposite. There is a huge difference in the healthcare expenditure. Singapore spent around $1,000. The United States almost $5,000. Life expectancy pretty much the same. So I propose you that the healthcare delivery problem in these three clusters of countries are different. And the solution must be different. So the question I would like to discuss with you is, can technology, and in particular a new type of technologies that we call predictive technology, where modeling and simulation help to predict the changes in the health status of individuals, can help the needs of this country and the different needs of this country. But what are the needs of these countries? Well, at the cost of oversimplifying a very complicated topic, I offer you three classes of problems. So in the red countries, the real problem is the access to the healthcare. These are countries that usually have some good healthcare infrastructure somewhere in the countries, usually in large city or in the capital, but they also have large chunk of population that, because of geographical or other natural barrier, lack of transportation infrastructure, struggle to access this healthcare services. So here the problem is accessibility. Then there are the blue countries. And for blue countries, the problem is really the bang for the buck. If we can reduce the cost to buy medical products, those countries can buy more health care for the limited money they have. And then there are the rich countries. And I propose to you that the problem, believe it or not, there is a problem also in the rich country, you wouldn't expect this, is the sustainability of the universal health care model. Okay? So these are the three things that I'll discuss today, and I'll show you how some of the predictive technology can help in each of these cases. So let's start from the red countries. I believe that one possible solution in this country is something we call personal health forecasting, which rely on mobile health technologies. Before, let me give you two facts. By 2020, 65% of the world population will be living in an area covered by a 4G mobile network. This means that this mobile network will be able to stream very large amounts of data. 95% of the world population will be covered by some mobile network. More important, for countries like the red countries that I suggested before, where typically there are communities geographically segregated in the middle of the jungle, separated by a desert, etc., with very, very small investment, it is possible to establish point-to-point connection over large distance and provide some sort of connectivity, even in really remote locations. First fact. The second fact is consumer electronic. Consumer electronic is a term used to indicate a pretty diverse industry that produce electronic products that are used by everyone in their daily life. So consumer electronic makes hard dryer, microwave ovens, the scale, the digital scale you use. Okay. Now in this industry there has been a big trend in the last few years. They discover personal health. Every year, dozens and dozens of new products are announced that are designed to measure various aspects of your personal health. I believe these are relevant for two reasons. First, this technology are incredibly cheap. Even if the price tag sometimes is high, the manufacturing costs are on the order of some dollars per device. So after the hype finish, it would be conceivable for a developing country to fabricate this type of technologies really for very, very little money. The second thing is that this technology are very cleverly designed to allow anyone without any medical education to use and obtain accurate measurements. Medical instrumentation is designed to be used by a nurse, by a doctor, and you have to be trained to use it properly. Otherwise, what you get is unreliable. Well, this piece of technology, with a lot of intelligence, trust me, they can provide you reliable measurement no matter who you are. Now, combine these two facts, okay, and imagine something that is already happening, where in every village, in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of a desert, one person receives some basic training he becomes the carer of the village, the carer of the community. He has a network connection through a mobile phone of some sort, and he receives a bag of this low-cost sensors. When someone in the community is sick, under the advice of a remote medical professional, measure, quantify the different physiological signals, and based on this information, remotely is advised about the best course of therapy for that person. In most cases, the therapy is handled locally. When the situation is very serious, a special transportation is organized somehow. Now, how can predictive technology make a quantum leap in this scenario, which is already happening? This is a social franchising in India, in Uttar Pradesh, where this is already happening, and there are many other experiences of this kind across the world. Well, I believe predictive technology could play two fundamental roles. The first is this: a lot of this sensor do provide useful information, but not all the information that a doctor would need to make a reliable diagnosis. Not all the information that the doctor would get if you were in the hospital. Now, with our predictive technology, we can take the data coming remotely from a sensor and predict the missing data so that the doctor is presented with the same type of data that normally you would require a fully equipped lab to collect. The second thing is long-term monitoring. So let's say that you've been diagnosticated with an abdominal aneurysm. This is a condition where the biggest vessel in our body, which is in the abdomen, makes a bulge. And it's a bit of a strange condition, because sometimes that bulge will stay like that forever. It will not progress, and you'll be perfectly healthy, and you won't have any problem. Sometime, actually, after a while, start to progress, and if you don't intervene, it will rupture, and if you don't get care very quickly, you will probably die. So let's say that one patient goes to the hospital and is found with a very early stage abdominal aneurysm. And this patient lives in a community that requires 3 days of travel. What do? Do you send it back there? It will, if things go wrong, he will definitely die. But what if we can use mobile technology like this one in combination with the subject-specific model of that patient that we generated when he was in the hospital, and then we use regular monitoring to predict how his aneurysm is developing and intervene if and only when it's really necessary and before time. You see the value of prediction, knowing things before they happen. Blue country, developing country where there is a clear relationship between expenditure in healthcare and extension of life expectancy. What can we do for this country? I believe that what we can do is to make more affordable the innovation in biomedical products. This graph represents the cost of bringing to the market a new drug. Today, a pharma company must spend around $2.5 billion to bring a new drug to the market. This is the cost of innovation for biomedical products. Now, of course, after you spend $2.5 billion, when you put the drug on the market, that is not going to be cheap, because you want to recover all the money you put on that product and then do some profit possibly, right? So where does this money go? Well, I'll tell you. 90% of this money are spent in making sure that the drug is safe and effective. It works as expected. First preclinically and then clinically. How do we do? Oh, well, we do in a very sophisticated way. We give the drug first to some animals and then to some humans, and then we watch them, and if they are fine and actually they get better, it means that the drugs work. Really? Now, drugs are not the only dangerous product in the world. An airplane, a large passenger carrier, if it falls down, it kills in one shot 700-800 people, no? So it should be safe. Or I'll offer you even a bigger thing, a nuclear power plant. If this thing blows, millions of people could die. Now, can you imagine that we test a new power plant design by making a few copies in the world and see whether they blow or not? This would be madness, right? How do we test a new design for a nuclear power plant? With computer simulation. Every time a new design comes out, we have in the computer all the simulation of all the possible things that have been wrong in the past. Of course, we cannot predict what never happened. So when a 7-meter wave slapped at Fukushima, that was never being in a computer simulation. But today, it is. Next time that we build one of those power plants, that case will be simulated. So my question is, why we're not using this for biomedical products? The answer is complicated, but the good news is that this is happening. We've been working for about 3 years with a collaboration of more than 600 experts across the world to produce this document that explain how it is actually possible to use modeling and simulation to test the safety and the efficacy of biomedical products. You can download it from the internet if you're interested. And in one of the few times in my life, it seems like politicians have been listening. So while we were doing this work, both the US Congress in July 2015 and the European Parliament in March 2016 produced a piece of legislation that said to their regulatory body, you must start to use modeling and simulation in testing biomedical products. So this is happening now. It's a completely new scenario. No one is prepared for that, but it's going to happen. And when it will happen in large scale, biomedical products will become dramatically cheaper. Innovation will be cheaper, which also means that a small pharma company placed in a developing country can start to develop a drug for a disease that is specific of that country that the big pharma don't care about. So this is a revolution. Incidentally, it also has two side effects which I believe are very good. The first is that a whole new industrial sector is starting around in silico clinical trials, as we call it. So this means new companies, startups, new jobs, again, not necessarily placed in the obvious Silicon Valleys. There are a lot of innovation and good idea in developing countries. The second is that as a result of this, in silico will also position as a non-animal alternative. And this will finally start to implement the ethical agenda that is becoming so important in developed country about the replacement, the refinement, and the reduction of animal experimentation. Okay, so green country, the rich country, they're rich, so they don't have any problem, right? Not so much. The vast majority of developed countries have a model called universal health care. Do you understand what it means, universal health care? It means that if you're sick, you'll be cured at the best possible. No matter who you are, if you're rich, if you're poor, it doesn't matter. If you're a citizen of that country, you get the best possible health care. End of the story. Now, there is a big debate in Europe, and in this country in particular, about this is still a viable idea. You know, NHS funding, every day in the newspaper, this is a hot topic. Well, I propose to you that this is a problem that has two elements, one political and one technical. So let's touch the political one for a moment, even if it's not my job. I'd like to remind you that in 1948, on the ashes of a terrible Second World War, a number of countries in the world met in Paris and signed a document called the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. In this document, that we seem to forget almost constantly today, but it's still there, at Article 25, it says that healthcare is a right, is a fundamental right of every human being. So I accept that things are not covered in stone forever, but let's not forget that what we are challenging here is not a benefit. Healthcare is not a a fast car or a Gucci bag that only some can afford. Healthcare is a universal right. So that's the political side. But then there is a technical problem, and it's serious. Now, while the world population is growing, developed countries started to stop making children quite a few years ago. And so we are experiencing denatality. Okay? So essentially more people die than more people are born. Okay? As a result, the average age of our population is going up. It won't be forever. In 50, 60 years, we will stabilize. But for now, every year we're getting older as a country. Okay? Not surprising. The more we get old, the more there is need for health care. That's obvious. But there is a second problem, which is much less debated, but I believe is equally important. It is the success of medical research. In the last 50 years, thanks to medical research, we transformed dozens of diseases that 50 years ago killed the patient within 12 months into a chronic disease. What is a chronic disease? You're not healed. You still have the disease, but if we keep giving you therapy, you will not die for that disease. Which, by the way, don't get me wrong, is great. I mean, it's much better to be chronic than being dead. But you can understand that this is going to make a huge impact on the sustainability. Because the good things about dead people is that they don't cost much in healthcare, okay? So these are the two sources of big problems, okay? But they translate into three specific issues. The first is multimorbidity. It's a difficult word, but what it means is that in the old days, a patient was a healthy person except that he has one disease. Today, 75% of the patients that comes in the Royal Hallamshire Hospital have a new disease, but they already have 2 or 3 diseases for which they're already being treated. That means that when the doctor has to decide what to do, it cannot make a population decision. It cannot say, oh, you have this disease, this is the best therapy, go home, goodbye. He has to understand the complex equation of every individual. In other words, the therapy has to be personalized for every patient. Second, for reason I explained, there is an explosion of chronic conditions. And there is nothing we can do about chronic condition but one thing, prevent. Prevent the appearance of the disease. So prevention is becoming a must. We must prevent. The last, I have to admit, I struggled with the translation. In Italian, there is a very accurate term, which is accanimento terapeutico, which I struggled to translate in English. The best I found is futile care. Let me explain what I was trying to say. So you're 85, which means that you're already 5 years beyond the average life expectancy in this country. This doesn't mean that you have to die tomorrow, but also it is plausible that in the near future your life may end for natural causes. You're diagnosticated with a cancer. We can keep you alive for many years, but to do this we have to inflict you very aggressive therapy that will dramatically reduce the quality of your life. Where if we leave you alone, there are good chances that you will die naturally before actually the cancer kills you. Who should decide this? I think the answer is easy, the patient. But the participation of the patient in the therapeutic decision can only be effective if the consent is informed. So if we can tell the patient, well, there are 2 options. If you do this, this is the most likely scenario. If you do that, this is the most likely scenario. You choose. That's a decision. But if you say, well, we don't know, then that's not a decision. It's a transfer of responsibility. Okay? So 3P, personalization, prevention, and participation. Why it's 4P? Well, because we believe that everything can be addressed with a 4th P, which is predictive. If we can build models of every patient that can predict how the current health status of that patient will change over time depending on which treatment we're giving to that patient, or with subject, not necessarily patient. With this predictive capability, we can personalize the treatment because we can simulate the different treatment options and see which one is the best for that particular patient. We can look how this person can change his lifestyle, his nutrition, his exercise, etc., in order to minimize the risk of developing a chronic condition. And we can finally be able to go to a patient for which we need to take a very difficult clinical decision and say, well, these are the two options, these are the two scenarios, this is the probability that we associate to this. Now let's decide together what is best for you and for your family. Now, this sounds science fiction, but it's not. A few research centers in the world, one of which is here in Sheffield, the Insignia Institute, are making daily this more and more a reality. The idea is to build very detailed computer models that incorporate data coming from genomics, from medical imaging, from blood tests, from medical instrumentation, with all available knowledge that we know about the physiology of human being, the pathology, and make specific predictions which are useful, provide useful information for the doctor to take a therapeutic decision. This is a grand vision, which is happening now, but it will develop massively in the future. And right now, the biggest limiting factor is the human factor. We desperately need a generation of people who are trained to these new technologies. So that's why we are launching, and it was approved officially yesterday, and we're opening the enrollment tomorrow, so this is very fresh. We are launching a Master of Science in Computational Medicine. This is a unique program. There are only 3 universities in the world that are offering this today: Johns Hopkins, University of Auckland, Sheffield University. It's a small cohort experience, hands-on, embedded in the research institute. We want to train the next generation of in silico medicine expert. So if you're a student, you're thinking about a master, take a look to it. I'm coming to my conclusion. So I presented you a scenario where a radical innovative technology called predictive technology, we believe could make a transformational change in our ability to deliver healthcare to a world of 10 billion. But the trick is to understand what are the needs of each community and tailor the technology to fit the needs of that community. Whether digital patient, in silico clinical trial, or personal health forecasting, we believe predictive medicine is the future. Thank you very much.